sure glad to see all of you. We're going to be talking about a subject tonight that I think has great potential in terms of promoting the good of the industry. How about now? How about that? I think that's the first time anybody's ever told me to speak loudly. We're just delighted all of you here representing the utility districts, primarily from 290 to Party Toll Road along the creek. We have just a project that we're really excited about sharing with you. To begin, Andy, will you introduce our special guest, please?
Thank you. We do have some special guests that are here with us today. We are still waiting on Commissioner Ramsey. They were setting our tax rate today, and they called a special meeting to do that. So unfortunately, he had to stay. No, fortunately, he had to stay for the tax rate. He told me this morning that he had a bit of a, he said, not anybody down there is going to agree with me. So he's representing us. Our special guests tonight include Sam Harless, who will be here later, Representative Bill Caligari. He'll stand. Bill is a longtime friend of the water industry, and I think everybody here knows Bill, and we appreciate his support. He is now on the Harris County Flood Resiliency Committee or Task Force, along with Bob Rehak, who is also a Commissioner's Court appointee to that body. We also have with us one or more members of the North Harris County Regional Water Authority. Al Rendell, who's the president. Al has an opponent this time for the first time in about 20 years, so go help Al. Is Jim Pulliam or Lynn Sigler here? Don't see them. Okay. Then I think that's all of our special guests.
All right. Thank you, Andy. Let me just give you just a couple of minutes history about the Cypress Creek Flooding Task Force. I'm Glenn Wilkerson. I'm president of the Cypress Creek Cultural District and also president of the Cypress Creek Flooding Task Force. And this all began a couple of years ago. It dawned on me that we really are bereft, or have been bereft, of community leadership in terms of promoting the mitigation of Cypress Creek. So I called together around 20 folks that I consider to be thought leaders here in Northwest Houston. And we've been meeting for 2 years now, doing the research, going through possible solutions. And about 8 months ago, we settled on the idea of their number of detention ponds recommended by the Cypress Creek Flood Control District. And the idea was that we would center on the 2 smallest detention ponds, and our task force would try to raise money for design and completion of those two ponds. And then about 5 months ago, we came across Andy Johnson. And Andy has a vision for our creating something much, much larger. It would be a Cypress Creek drainage Cypress Creek Drainage Improvement District, which would encompass the entire watershed. It's an idea that would let us, as a collective group of water districts across the watershed, to really do something that would allow us to take a really big bite out of the flooding problem. Won't solve all of it, but a district, a special district that will allow us to do something really large in terms of mitigating the flooding. Now, we shared this idea from the very beginning with Commissioner Ramsey and with State Representative Sam Harless, both of whom encouraged us, said they thought it was a good idea. And so we've been working over the past 4 months, and those of you who are members of the task force, would you stand, please? Thank you. A little hand of applause. Some of us they've been working this really hard. And Andy, why don't you share the design with us?
Thank you, Glenn. And I know many of you and have seen you on and off over the years, whether it's in church, whether it's in the grocery store, in a water board meeting, or at AWBD. I think I know all of you, especially the main troublemaker, Nick. Nick is a good friend, and I appreciate Nick. Let's see if this works. It's not working as advertised, so. Oh, there we go. But we're talking about the proposed Cypress Creek Drainage Improvement District, which is a step up from where we are now. We have a large community of about 154 utility districts that is a very successful and vibrant community. Unfortunately, we've had some experiences over the last few years that have tarnished our community a bit. And that's what we want to talk about now. We want to talk about protecting our community now. As you know, we live in the Cypress Creek watershed, which is about 267 square miles spread across North Harris County to the west and even into Waller County. We have about 10% of the entire population of Harris County, about 450,000 folks according to the 2020 census. And from what I'm told, it increases at a remarkable clip. We've had a long history of flooding. I remember when I moved here in 1979, my wife, Debbie, who was from the Houston area, Conroe to be specific, promised me that we would not have a problem with hurricanes. I grew up in southwest Texas, so I was from the desert. I was not used to seeing a lot of water. Well, lo and behold, the first week that we were here, maybe it was the first month, we had a tropical storm. It was an unnamed storm. It was in 1979, in September, I believe. And I'm told now, according to, well, you look at the Harris County Flood Control District website, they have an unnamed storm in 1949. Fast forward 30 years later, two unnamed storms in 1979. And then fast forward 30 years, no, I keep Well, we're having technical difficulties.
part of the task force, and she also runs the county library. All right.
All right, we're back on track. So we had a storm in 1949, a storm in 1979. Those are on the flood control website. And then we had a spate of storms from 2001 to 2019, which looks like a lot of storms in a very few years. And I think it's without question that they are increasing in frequency and intensity. And a couple of those have parked over the Cypress Creek watershed. And I don't know about you, but I can't tell you how many district meetings I've been to where we're talking about flooding, we're talking about rescuing people, and particularly in this area too, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute. In fact, we have that should have gone down.
Sarah?
I can try, but it's not a library laptop.
I should have gotten the library laptop. You can tell my major was not IT. This is what I was told to use. But it doesn't show up there. I'll try it too. Well, what we have is a heat map of the flooding, which is mainly between about I-45, a little bit past I-45 and Hardy Toll Road, up to this area and beyond, over to about 290. And there, we had some of the photographs circulating, and we appreciate very much the use of the photographs. I don't know what's happened here. But we have floods of increasing frequency, increasing intensity, and there have been multiple studies over a number of years on what's causing it, how it can be fixed. And that goes back to the studies by Michael Baker, Philip Bedian, and several studies by flood control that recommend 26,000 acre-feet of storage in Cypress Creek, another 30,000 in Little Cypress Creek, and other studies have talked about how, or discussed how do we increase conveyance, how do we do the things that we know we need to do to ensure the safety and protect our homes. There's a major problem that permeates all of the issues with flood control in Cypress Creek. That's a lack of funding. There are not enough local or federal dollars to go around. Therefore, Cypress Creek is not being improved as fast as and storms are increasing and flooding is increasing. The most recent plan is the Cypress Creek implementation plan, which is a plan a study performed by Jones and Carter. How many of you have heard of the Jones and Carter report? The Jones and Carter report is in essence distilling the prior studies, Baker, perhaps some from Bedian, and other studies internally that flood control has performed to come up with an action plan or a discussion of how we could do something, flood control could do something now. Flood control circumscribed what could be done and limited some of the results. Therefore, there may be things other than just the Jones and Carter study that could be studied. This is still not going. Okay.
IT is working on it, but
IT is working on it. Okay.
carry on.
All right, carry on. So, one of the things that the Jones and Carter study of the Cypress Creek implementation plan suggested or recommended was storage basins of up to 12,800 acre feet, and it could be more depending on how things are negotiated with respect to some of the basins. They also indicated that it would cost approximately $600 million. But if we were to be able to accomplish some or all of those basins, then that would be a first step solution. And it's stated in the Jones and Carter report that it is estimated that it would remove about 39% of the structures from the 10-year flood map, 22% from the 50-year flood map, and about 19% from the 100-year flood plain. So we have a few options. One option is to do nothing, and that means waiting for the next county bond election. It means hoping for an allocation of funds for that next bond election. Now, the bond election was called just a couple of weeks ago, but we do not know at this point exactly what will be included in that, and it is apparent from the majority of the Commissioners' Court today that Cypress Creek would not receive any significant funds from that. So what will it take? 5 or 10 years or more? And how many floods will we have in the next 10 or 20 years as we wait for funding and as this area becomes stigmatized as far as livability in the community from future flooding? Now, a lot of the studies that have been performed have talked about conveyance, and some of the folks who are working on this task force believe that conveyance and waiting and investment in conveyance capacity improvements is the thing to do. But other similar projects, such as Brace Bio or Sims Bio, have taken 20 to 30 years, and that's a big fix, and it takes a lot more resources than we currently have at our disposal. Another option is a tunnel to Lake Houston. That's also a very big fix, and a fix, frankly, I agree with, and I agree with improving conveyance as well, but that's another 30-year, $30 billion project, even if something on Cypress Creek does get done. So what we're proposing today is that we start protecting people now. That means your homes and your neighbors' homes. And so that leads to, how do we fund something like this? I
Doing
assure-
good, ain't it?
Huh?
You're doing good. Keep going.
I assure you there are slides here that we all will get to see, and the plan is to put them on the task force website.
That's a good idea.
So, some of the advantage, what's that?
Maybe we should reboot it. I tell you, Andy, you're doing good. Just do it.
All right, I'll keep going. We can show you all the slides. One of the advantages of the district is access to federal and state funding and participation in the state flood plan. It's being developed now. We're in Region 6. A couple of our friends in the industry, Tim Busham with IDS Engineering and Leah Vinson with Allen Humphreys Robinson are the heads of that for this region. We also have the choice of issuing bonds. We have the choice of pay-as-you-go, so long-term financing or pay-as-you-go. And we also have projects that can be started more quickly because flood control has already vetted and done some of the planning for some of these projects. So whichever choice is made by the future board of this proposed district, it would be phase one of a very long process, because ultimately we are going to have to address some of the conveyance issues. And we are going to have to address some of the bigger issues that flood control of the county has not addressed, but we can get started on today.
Where would the funding come from to do that?
I'll show you just a moment. Now, I have a slide here that you cannot see, but and the slide actually shows, it's a page from the Jones and Carter report that shows where these detention ponds will be located, or they're proposed to be located. There are also indications that we have just heard in the last few weeks about some districts purchasing the land or having land which would be added to this network that would be easily accessed for new construction. And so the next slide shows you that phase one is actually a slide from the Jones and Carter report, which is also known as the Cypress Creek Implementation Plan program, that there are 22 basins in 11 locations with a total cost of approximately $597 million, or we're calling it $600 million. That does not include the price of one basin that has not been sized or purchased yet. But we're talking about approximately a phase one in the neighborhood of $600 million. Now, you're not going to go build $600 million worth of detention, in a year. It's going to take a number of years to do it. It's just you don't have enough contractors. You don't have enough whatever to go do all of that at the same time. So we have 154 approximately districts in the watershed, and we went to, I wanted to see if this was financially feasible, directly to your question. And so we went to the Harris County Tax Assessor's Office, got the 2021 values of every district in the watershed. We noticed that there was quite a large area, a lot of acreage that is undeveloped or not in districts, even if it is developed. So we added 10% for that. And then we added 10% because our AVs for this year coming in significantly higher. We have one district that is up 18% from last year. And by the way, we're going to have the 22 values here in the next 60 days or so. The result is we have right at $60 billion worth of value in the entire watershed. This is only Harris County, it does not include the portions that are in Waller County. And so I had somebody that was a lot smarter with numbers than myself to analyze the numbers. And what I was told that if you did it all at once, you have a couple of choices. You can, at a certain tax rate, you can raise a certain amount of money. And so with a 5% interest rate, which I think is very conservative, I'm told by Al Rendell that the Water Authority has accessed the Water Development Board SWIFT funds for about a 2.78% interest rate or thereabouts. And it would seem that those types of funds would be available to this entity, as well as possibly federal funds or grant funds. But if you had a 25-year term, each $100 million in value would, at a 10-cent tax, would support approximately $1.4 million in bonds, even though if you look at Water Development Board funding today, it's available for a point to a point and a half lower than what market is today. You can also do a pay-as-you-go. If you could raise $55 or $60 billion a year, you could build a lot of ponds on a pay-as-you-go basis. Or the future board could choose a combination of these approaches. So, how much does that cost me? How much does it cost you? Well, if the future board decides that bonds would be issued, as you all are aware, since you're in the water business, tax rates are based on a per $100 assessed valuation. And if it were a 10-cent tax, I'm not saying it's a 10-cent tax or a 5-cent tax or any kind of tax, but 10 cents would raise on each $100,000, $100. So if the average home in the area is, as I've been told, is $300,000, I think that's going up as far as new construction is concerned, from what I can tell. But that's $300 a year, or less than $1 a day, for added flood protection. And then the next question is whether or not it will be billed through your water bill or through your mud tax. And the answer is no. It will not be billed through your water bill. It will not be billed through your mud tax statement. It will be billed on your county tax statement, just like Harris County Flood Control District, Port Authority, Hospital District, and others. So what alternatives have been considered? Well, it looks to me, and when you look at the water code, there are a number of entities that can do drainage. The first one that jumps out is a drainage district under Chapter 56. And the lawyers, we'll get to questions in a bit. And the lawyers know these, will understand all these code citations. But a drainage district is something that typically is created by the county, and the drainage plan and things like that are typically approved by county commissioners court. And my belief is that this entity needs to be independent and not subject to control by commissioners court. It's not a political statement, it's a statement of reality and how if we in this area are going to take this, take our own destiny in our hands, then we need to control it. Another option would be a Chapter 51 Water Control Improvement District. It could be created through the TCEQ or through the legislature. And there are examples of drainage districts in this, in the county, such as Wolf Fork Drainage District. You can go to their website and see what they have done. Another option could be a Chapter 375 municipal management district or improvement district. It's under the local government code. And it has a few more powers which could be useful down the road. Now, there's no desire on anyone's part to do anything other than drainage. And in fact, that would, that would need to be specified if anybody thinks it needs to be specified. Because the MUDs are in control of their own growth, their own tax rate, and their own operations. And there's no intent for this to be interfering or competing with that at all. This would be totally drainage and totally drainage, in the greater watershed. Our recommendation is that we have legislative creation of an improvement district, which of course means you'll have city consent and of course go to the legislature. So if we assume that that's what we're going to do, then here's the timeline. From now to about mid to late November, we work on the bill and we submit it to the legislature as soon as we get it in good shape. And at the same time, we'll be working on getting city consent. There has to be a notice published 30 days in advance, which would have to, for all local bills, which we would, of course, publish. And then the session starts about mid-January, runs to the end of May. During that time, we'll be having hearings, talking to legislators about creation of the district and how it will work with existing districts in the area, which includes you all. And with any luck and a lot of hard work, in early June or the last day of May, we will have a district created, which will then need to be signed. The bill will have to be signed by the governor. That will be around mid-June, and after that, we would need to organize the board, call an election, which would be called in about what has to be by August 22nd of 23 for November 7th, 23 election. So if we did all of that, and if we were successful, and in the vein of let's make this successful, what is the ask of you? And both districts and individuals can contribute to the effort. We would encourage you to stay informed. Our intent is to keep everyone informed at all times about everything that's going on, which is important. The next thing is to spread the word, whether it would be on your websites, in your newsletters, taking the information that is taking the information that's furnished by this group. We urge you to become a part of this group. We will also need to have certain members of the Water District community, if you're in favor of it, to testify before the legislature. That's always a big thing. I remember during the Regional Water Authority creation, we took carloads of people to Austin to testify. Lastly, we would ask you to endorse the creation of this drainage improvement district. We have a sample resolution that will be available to you as you leave. But I think that right now we need to turn to your questions and any comments that you might have.
Let me say a few words.
I gotta tell you, that's pretty remarkable. He had done an absolutely fantastic hire.
Definitely out of sight.
Let me just say a few words. The 3 floods that we had prior to Harvey were catastrophic enough. It'd be hard to overstate the enormity of the damage done by Harvey. Over 9,000 residences, in addition to that, all kinds of structures, churches, water plants, wastewater plants, schools, businesses, and the cultural district. I want to say a word about the cultural district. It's composed of the County Library, the Marble Bush County Library, the Pearl Art Museum across the street, the Cypress Creek Christian Community Center, which you're sitting in right now, the soon-to-be completed George Bush Community Center, which is right next door, the county courthouse, which contains not only the JP court, but also the constables and the sheriff's offices. All of that went underwater during Harvey, every last piece of it. The culture district is unique. There's nothing like it anywhere else in the county. A place where hundreds of thousands of residents are served here every year. And I got to tell you, if there's another flood and the culture district is inundated by water, along with all the other structures along Cypress Creek, they're probably not going to be rebuilt. And that will result in a dramatic decrease of property values throughout the community. I think, Mark, where are you? Mark Adam? Okay. As Mark said, basically, we're all in the floodplain. If there is flooding along the creek, it will impact the property values of every structure in the waterway. Now, the Harris County Flood Control District's Cypress Creek Improvement Plan was released this past January, and it recommended 22 stormwater detention ponds. In 2018, county bond election allocated $100 million for site acquisition along the creek, but only $47,000 for actual construction of the sites. So there's such a discrepancy there in terms of what's needed and what we can afford. And the truth be told is, there's no other place to get the money to fund what needs to be done other than what we are proposing. Now, I'm not saying that once the Cypress Creek Detention Improvement District, once it's created, doesn't mean that the board will decide to do the 22 detention ponds, or may decide to do something else. But at least for us to generate the funds that enable us to do something right now that will help us mitigate flooding along the creek. Creation of the Cypress Creek Drainage and Improvement District will allow us to take our destiny in our own hands. Right now, there are no possibilities for future flood. Hello there. Yay. Commissioner, be back. They're kind of warming up the baritone. Okay? We're talking about $600 million if a future water board, special district board decided to implement the Cypress Creek Drainage Improvement Plan. They may decide to do something else. But the truth be told, we need funding, we need it now, in order for us to do something significant in regard to mitigating the flooding along the creek. The creation of a Cypress Creek Drainage and Improvement District will allow us to take our destiny into our own hands. Maxine, do you hear? There he was. Matt. Howdy. Our task force met with Matt for, you all know him. He was the executive representatives have said that, it may be years before there's another countywide election, and when it takes place, there may or may not include some of the things that need to be done along Cypress Creek. So this is our last best hope of addressing the mitigation options that are suggested by the flood control district, as well as other mitigating options that will present themselves to a future board of directors. Now, with 157 utility districts in the Cypress Creek watershed, individually, we have no voice. The special district will create an entity that will bring our entire community together, that will allow us to raise the monies for things such as the detention ponds, and also give us a powerful voice in terms of our seeking county, state, and federal funding. So I want to thank all of you for being here. You are so important in terms of the quality of life in your neighborhoods and in your district. And you're important in terms of helping to determine our future regarding mitigation along Cypress Creek. Together, we can do great things. We can control our own destiny. I don't know whether it was Matt or someone else from the flood control district a while back said, don't look to the government to save you. You must save yourselves. And this special district is an opportunity to take our destiny in our own hands, make some things happen that will benefit the entire community. Let's have a panel here and give an opportunity to ask questions, and y'all come forward. And y'all can take the two in backs. By the way, you notice at the bottom of your church, I call it a bulletin. By the way, I've pastored this church for 35 years, and I just can't help it. Anytime I see a crowd this big, I want to take over the collection. Okay, Claire, if you, I'm going to tell on you to kind of wrap things up.
Wrap it up? Is that it?
Well, we're going to have some questions.
Okay. Let me
Offer
offer a few.
And Sandy, you're over there, rather than make do it now.
Well, it's good to see all of you here tonight. I can only assume that people are here because they want to do something about flooding in the Cypress watershed. And I've got a lot of good input this week. Heard from many of you, emails, text, and phone calls, in terms of what you could and could not support. On anything like this, the devil's in the details. And that's why we have meetings like this, is we can try to sort some of this out. But let me just say, I've left where I was, and the reason I was late, we had Commissioner's Court meeting to discuss a tax rate. Had Commissioner Court meeting to discuss a budget. If you think they're worried about what's going on in the Cypress watershed, they're not. And I'm just being as clear as I know how to be. So I think these kinds of discussions are important. It's important that a group of people get together and decide this is what we're going to do. Because I think, as Glenn said just now, if you're waiting on somebody to come take care of you, you're not going to do it. We have 202 MUDs in my precinct, and I'm proud of that. There's not many entities that can say that. 1.2 million people, 202 MUDs. The primary governance in Harris County Precinct 3 is municipal utility districts or special purpose district, and that's a good thing. Praise the Lord, you're not in the city of Houston. Because if you were trying to get something done with the city of Houston, with their tax rate, with their bureaucracy right now, if you tried to get something done through them, you're not going to do that. So the devil's in the details. How can you take control of and do projects? I'm a do-it kind of engineer. I have been an engineer, still am, for 45 years. I'm not into planning, I'm into doing. So we can identify projects, and it may come out of the Michael Baker report, it might come out of the Jones and Carter report, it might come out. I've gotten a lot of great ideas from people, some of you in this room, in terms of what we could and could not do if we had a special purpose district. So I'm just going to say, please don't get too hung up on, well, there was a report done by Michael Baker in 2002, and I want to be sure we take care of everything that was said in that report. Well, let's not get too tied to any one given. I'm a project-focused person. I really liked what we did on I-45. And we got serious that we were going to get some desilting done on the Cypress Creek. And I don't know if there's other people in the room that participate in that. I think there are. And thank you, because you went down there and told Ely and Corey, who I've known for a few years at TxDOT, you engaged with TxDOT, and you know they're cleaning out the creek. You know, we're told in the Cypress watershed, man, that we're not real sure we can clean that thing out. We're not sure we can desilt it. And I know that's kind of a touchy area, but we can do anything we decide to do, right? If it's time to desilt the Cypress watershed in order to offer better flooding, we should do that. If it's time to put the pumps in our detention basins, we should do that. You know, a pump in a detention basin, that's not an end-all solution, but it is one thing we could do. You could increase efficiency in these detention basins by 10, 20, 30%. We ought to talk about it. We pump our wastewater, I don't know why we don't pump our stormwater. So this is what a special district can do, I think. It can do that. But, you know, currently, as I said, I got 202 municipal utility districts. Y'all are the primary governments. Y'all all have a tax rate. Y'all all have the ability to partner with Harris County Precinct 3 to do projects. It makes it easy sometimes if we can do it in the context of a district. But I'm saying businesses, we're open for business in Precinct 3 to partner with municipal utility districts, and maybe that hadn't always been the case, but it is the case now, because we can do particular projects. I'm going to give a good shout out to a detention basin within the precinct that we're talking to a particular PUD about what we could do and the possibilities of offering more in the area. It's rapid, and I'll just say it. They've been very good to listen. They're running their traps on what we could do. I'm running my traps on what we can do. That's how partnership works. We can figure this stuff out, but we gotta, I think, try to get on some kind of a page. I'm not telling you what the right page is, but we need to get on some kind of a page. It's good to see Bill Calgary there. I don't know if he's someone I work with, is on the Resilience Task Force, and is our other task force person. There he is. Bob, good to see you. And Mr. Bob, he's got more ideas than anybody I've ever talked to in terms of what you could or couldn't do. So between Matt Zeeb and Bob Rahak and others, there's a lot of things that we can do. Please, let's look at this as an opportunity to address our flooding, address some of the problems we've got in Cypress, because I guarantee you, downtown, they're not worrying about the people in the Cypress Creek watershed. It's a shame. And I'll work on that part of it. But I want to, thank you for coming here tonight. Just your presence speaks volumes to me in terms of you are serious that we need to do something. And you're serious that what we've been doing in the past, that hadn't worked. Because there's not near enough projects going on in the Cypress watershed to satisfy any of us. So consider this a part of our opening dialogue. Appreciate our state rep there, kind of guide us through choppy waters in Austin, and whether it's doing a district or whether it's just getting some good things done. Again, this is more of a welcome here. Ask the questions that you need to ask. I think this panel is ready to address them, and I'm not saying more. I'll sit down and certainly like to participate at some point. Thank you.
Commissioner made a really good point. We shouldn't get hung up on the specific tracks that the future board of the special district will take. They may decide to do portions of the Baker study, the Freestone, Jones Carter study. That will be up to the board to decide. Our real question is the creation of a special district, the Cypress Creek Drainage Improvement District, that will enable all of us to address these problems together. And we'll end up electing a board that will analyze the best path to take. But we've got to get started in terms of creating our own destiny with the creation of this district. The two guys that have just really been right at the forefront of this are the commissioner and also Sam Wallace, our state rep. Sam, you want to say a few words? When we first started talking about the creation of the special district, the two of them said, I think that's a great idea. And so we wouldn't be here had it not been for their support. Sam?
Thank you. Thank you for all y'all turning out tonight and giving up your time. You know, this is going to be a very contentious issue because it's ultimately going to cost people money. My job is to represent my community. If you guys decide to do this, I'm on board. I'll carry the legislation. Dan Huberty of Kingwood filed this pretty much the same bill last session. He got it through the House. It died in the Senate. So there's no guarantees, even if we file it, that it happens. But we know what happens if you don't do anything. We'll continue to flood. When I got elected, I promised I would try to do something about flooding. I filed a bill last session and got it passed that you can't build assisted living facilities in a 100-year floodplain anymore. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? The opposition was, well, we'll raise them. Well, what happens to the people that are inside the assisted living facilities if they need medical care? You can't get to them. Number one. And number two, we're putting our first responders at risk trying to get to them. So I was happy we got that done and signed into law. My first session is we filed a bill that Harris County Flood Control, we did it for Matt too, he's working over at Harris County Flood Control. If property was owned or maintained by Harris County Flood Control, and somebody had an obstacle or an obstruction on it, they could remove it after 10 days after they sent a certified letter. Well, why not? Somebody puts something on my property, I'm going to remove it before 10 days, I can guarantee you. But what that did is give Harris County Flood Control access to start doing maintenance on some projects that needed to be done. And this right here, this is very important for our community. I'm going to tell you, I've lived out here since 1976. The house I grew up in Ponderosa never flooded until Hurricane Harvey. It had 6 foot of water in it. So you can see all the construction we're doing around here. It's getting built up and built up and built up, and the dirt is going away. If we don't do anything, we know we're going to flood again. This could be a very good thing if it's done correctly, but understand it's going to be a tax on the people that elect y'all in our community. And sometimes we have to do that, because if we wait on Harris County downtown, they're not going to do it. I can promise you. This new bond that they propose, if you look at the numbers, I guarantee you, out here in our community, we're not going to get much of it. So, it's a lot to take on. I'm very proud of Dr. Wilkerson for taking this step forward, and we're going to see how it progresses, and thank y'all again for being here tonight.
Joe Myers, George Beckham, Sarah Lewis, and Andy Johnson. Did you want to make
Can we just do some introductions?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, Joe Myers. So I am here representing, in a way, the Cypress Creek Flood Control Coalition. I had a long career at the Harris County Flood Control District for 26 years. In fact, one of my coworkers is here. He worked with me for a long time there. I started in 1985. Also spent 6.5 years in the city of Houston and a few stints at private firms. I retired this past January thinking that I'd take it easy Someone told me about Cypress Creek Flood Control Coalition. I knew them. I knew Dick Smith. I've known Dick Smith since 1999. So I knew of them. I just didn't know the organization that well. And so I decided I'd investigate it, and 3 months later, I'm their president. And so be careful what you wish for in retirement. I don't necessarily regret it. It's just been a relatively fast, interesting first 3 or 4 months. So one of the biggest things I brought to them just a few weeks ago was a resolution. And you'll see kind of a draft of that resolution before you leave today. I'm not crazy about another layer of taxation. Personally, I'm not. But when you wake up in the morning and you see water in the streets or water rising fast, there's not a whole lot coming to protect you. And just because it's happening to your neighbor and not you doesn't mean it's not happening to you. I thought water would never get to my house, ever. I was 7, 8 feet above the floodplain, living in Coles Crossing. My wife kept telling me, you need to be ready to raise the furniture. I said, no, Noah would have to be coming through before I would have to raise my furniture. That day, she's camped out at a hospital because she was a pharmacist. And I called her and I told her I saw Noah. Because the water was rising and it got 3 or 4 inches above the sidewalk, and that's the closest. I was there for 3 or 4 days. No one's coming to save us, as an ex-flood control person said. So I resigned myself in this fight to get a resolution through that there are no other options. This is a unique opportunity for the Cypress Creek watershed to own its own destiny and not have to answer to a commissioner's court or to another city or anybody else. And this isn't just mud. You're being invited here because you are the community leaders in Cypress Creek. So your opinion matters. What you bring back to your constituents matters. So we are reaching out to you first to let you know what's going on. This is something that affects everybody in the watershed, not just people living in muds, non-muds, individual property owners, businesses, everybody. And so I want you to seriously consider this as an opportunity. Try to put aside your personal feelings a little bit and think about what this could do for the community, for Cypress Creek. I've lived through a lot of big projects at flood control. A lot of channels out there, and Sims Bio was one that comes to mind. It had a huge stigma on it. Sims Bio just went through and finished up in 16, a major flood control federal project. You didn't hear much about Sims Bio when Harvey came through, because it's the best bio they have now. We don't have federal funding coming to us. It's not going to come. Anyone who's got a dream about that, go dream about something else, because it's not coming. So this is our best opportunity. I hope you listen, I hope you participate, I hope you support. Thank you.
I think the common denominator for all of us is we live in the area, we've been here for a long time, and we'd like to see the problems with Cypress Creek alleviated. We see our quality of life going down. We see the possibility of people moving away, the businesses just down the street closed, the pharmacy closed, the bank closed. Therefore, our tax base is going to erode. We're not going to be able to keep the quality of life. Our home values are going to go down, and our kids aren't going to have the quality of school that we want. My name is George Peckham. I've lived in this area since 1974. I'm born in Houston. I know about flooding. I don't know all the answers, but I know there's been floods. And I'm also on a mud board, Mud 36. And I've worked with Paul Eschenfelder and Cy Creek Stop the Flooding. We started right after Harvey. And this group here that Glenn's put together, and then with Dick Smith and Jim Robertson, there's several groups out here that are trying to achieve the same goals. And I believe that this is our best opportunity. We're going to have to tax ourselves. We're going to have to pay for it ourselves. Otherwise, you're not going to help us. And that's not Harris County, it's not the GLO, and it's not the federal government.
Thank you, George. Sarah?
I'm Clara Lewis. I've lived in this area since 1976. I was the Minister of Music and Community Center Director here for 30 years, worked with Glenn. My late husband, was president of 109 for 20 years. I understand the enormity of the responsibility that you have as a director of a MUD and your responsibility to your constituency. And I also understand the influence that you have in making good things happen for the community. This seems like such an overwhelming project, mainly because we're an unincorporated area with there's no city hall, no city government to go to, and we've worked with that over the years. This complex right here, this community center, the museum, the library, the courthouse, the park back here, all of this comes as a result of our community leaders coming together with a shared vision saying, we need this for our families and for our future posterity. Yes, it's going to involve a tax. I live in Windrose. My house doesn't flood. My primary interest is seeing to it that these amenities that we have don't flood anymore. And probably in my lifetime, I'm not going to see these 30-year projects. I hope I don't see those 30-year projects that far down the line come into fruition. But I'm willing to have something added to my tax base so that it doesn't happen. It doesn't take away this opportunity for my children and the residents of this community that follow us. I hope that you too will find this this formation of an entity through which we can have a voice and affect positive action now, not wait for another 10 years for something that may or may not happen. Thank you for being here.
Well, you all know me, so I won't say any more about me, but I will say that we've had some other folks come in who I'd like to recognize. One is Jim Pulliam. There he is over there. He's a member of the board of directors of the North Harris County Regional Water Authority, along with Al. And the second is Alan Petro, my partner, who is chairman of the Harris Gallatin Coastal Subsidence District.
Let me say one thing about this. If this were successful, we're able to apply for state money, for grants from the state and even the federal government. So it's not like the monkey will just be on our back. We can also apply for state grants and federal grants to help along. It could be a good thing.
Thanks, Sam. This is advertised again at 7:30, but with y'all's concurrence, let's go over a little bit and take some questions and addresses to the panel. And Barbara, you and Clara will be holding the microphones. If you do speak right into it.
Your affiliation with your MUD, your name?
Well, I'm a consultant to Walking Alley Mud in Cypress, and I've got several questions real quickly. Is this independent board going to have eminent domain?
No.
Well, then Harris County Flood Control does, and they're going to take all the land that they've been doing. How are you going to get the additional acreage you need for detention? And secondly, did the Johnson Carter Fund study include the Willis Creek overflow or the Willow Creek overflow?
Well, it's a several-part question. You're talking Willow Creek overflow into Cypress or the Cypress overflow into...
So let me just jump in. So in order to create, so we all know that there's an issue in Cypress Creek. The issue is tremendous, as several studies have shown. And we're not here to debate the technical merits of what a study may or may not have. The fact of the matter is there's a problem, and it's a big problem, and it's an unfunded solution. And whether we talk about one basin or 100 basins or 3 overflows or no overflows, it's kind of irrelevant at this time. the district has to begin with something. Something has to be shown to the regulators as to what do you intend to accomplish. When you were in your muds, I don't know if many of you were not in your muds at the very beginning, but your developer showed everything that was going to be done in the mud to support the creation of the mud. And so that's what this is a report. I do not like using engineering firms' names. Flood Control paid $1.4 million to a firm to prepare a report. It's not their report. So it's a Flood Control District report. It's a Cypress Creek implementation plan. It goes all the way back and incorporates aspects of the Baker study and the amendments to the Baker study. But Matt will know, and other folks in Flood Control know all more about that report than I will ever know. It's a study. And another study will more likely be done at some point after the creation, if the district is created. So I don't want to get all hung up on the engineering that goes into it. $600 million isn't near enough to solve all the problems in Cypress Creek. It's more like a $1 billion or $2 billion or $3 billion solution. So, but every solution needs a first step. And that's what this $600 million that we keep referring to, the $50 to $60 million per year keeps referring to, is a first step. If you want to look at and compare this to federal projects take 30 to 50 years to get completed. We're just talking 10. Cypress Creek might need the 30 to 50 years of time frame. But this gets it started. Commissioner Ramsey and I have had conversations about this. A cubic yard of material taken out of Cypress Creek is a cubic yard that can be filled up with water. So let's start working on cubic yards of material. And so this district would really accelerate 12,000 acre feet of storage, which is a whole lot of cubic yards of storage.
Thank you. Claire, why don't we take one over here?
Hi, sir. What mud are you associated with?
One more time.
What mud are you associated with?
Got a lot. I really don't need that, because I think I can talk loud enough so everybody can hear me. It's one of my problems all my life. It seems to me that what I am hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is all of the thoughts right now are into moving dirt. We're either going to make holes in the ground, or we're going to move the sides outward or downward or whatever. But I'm not sure we're addressing the primary reason for the flooding. It's not just a lot of rain. It's that the rain doesn't have a place to go. All the development that we've done has taken away the raw land that absorbs the water, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it, and filled it with houses, with concrete roadways, and so forth. What I'm not hearing is, what do we do to possibly curtail the future? I mean, God helped form the creek, and for thousands of years it seemed to be okay until people moved in. What about downstream with all the undeveloped property that the developers are out there putting houses and roads and so forth? And I know this is politically unacceptable to say, let's slow down our development in the community, but if we let more raw land out there in the future, or at least slow its occupancy, maybe we could curtail some of the flooding in addition to moving dirt. Now, I don't hear anything proposed that has anything to do with helping curtail some or limit future development or causing less hard cover, roads, houses, whatever. And I'm comfortable in mine. My house hasn't flooded, and I've been in it over 40 years.
Well, let me take a stab at that.
Is because we're talking about a district to improve drainage. It's not our role to limit progress or to do something. That's for other authorities to do.
I thought we were talking about a district to decrease flooding.
No, we're talking about a drainage improvement district.
Really? That's not what the sign says. And the end that goes out is a flood control district. I am
huge problem. I think for us to deal with the drainage aspect of it is,
I'm sorry, I can't hear two conversations.
I think what you've outlined is a huge problem, the development that continues. However, we can only do what we can do, and our primary goal is to address the drainage aspects of it. I think the development, that's probably more of a political problem, isn't it, Sam?
Well, I think we're talking about two different purposes for two different problems. The first problem that you're talking with, which is the problem you're addressing, is a regulatory problem. And the regulatory problem is controlled by, the solution to the regulatory issue is controlled two places. One, in the county giving building permits, and two, in flood control regulating how much detention or channelization or whatever things need to be done. That's in the ballpark of the county and flood control. The thing that we are attempting to address is existing flooding and trying to protect more structures, more homes, more commercial and community structures from flooding due to rainfall, and a lot more rainfall than we've experienced in the past, because that appears to be good.
You're proposing to form a government agency, the flood, the drainage, and my understanding is that government agencies can lobby other government agencies. So it is possible, wouldn't it be, for what we're forming, or we'd like to form, to lobby Commissioner's Court, lobby the county commissioners, lobby the state to help us, since we don't get any other monetary help. Maybe we just need to take the bull by the horns. I'm only saying from another part of what the purpose could be, or what we could attempt to do. Because it seems to me, helping the drainage right now is a wonderful thing, it will greatly help. But it's like fighting windmills, because we're, as a community, a large community, all we're doing is causing more problems downstream.
Well, that may certainly be part of it, and keep in mind that until we have something like this, we don't have a seat at the table. A friend of mine told me a long time ago, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu.
It's good.
That's where we are.
It's a good point. It's a two-headed serpent. And right now, our focus primarily is on the drainage aspect of it. Bill Calgary is one of the giants in terms of the flooding situation. Did you say a few words, Bill?
Well, let me say first, I live in Katy. I'm on the front end of where this whole thing started from Cypress Creek. I lived on the Katy Prairie for 41 years, and we didn't flood into Harvey until, tax day. We flooded about 6 inches tax day, and we flooded again at Harvey. So for almost 40 years, I didn't worry about rain. I didn't worry about what might be happening, whether we'd flood or not, because it always went downstream. Well, all of a sudden, we begin, the areas continued development. They built the Grand Parkway. They built a lot of subdivisions are built. 3 years ago, there were no subdivisions around me. Right now, I've got houses in every direction from where I live, which is I'm 3 miles from the Waller County line. So all of a sudden, we're seeing water we never saw before. We're seeing things that had never happened before. So anything you do needs to start basically actually in Waller County and cover the whole Cypress Creek area. It's really important that we look at the whole problem from one end to the other. Unless we do that, it's going to be very difficult to accomplish anything. I am on the flood resiliency task force, but frankly, we've been in business 2 years and haven't accomplish anything, because there's a lot of red tape to keep us from doing what we need to do. So, if one of the things I got to tell you is, look at this proposal. I think it has a lot of merit. It's going to be difficult to get it through the legislature, but I think Sam can make it happen, and certainly Sam, I pledge to help any way I can. And our commissioner wants to see it happen. I think at some point in time, people have to grab the bull by the horns and say, this is what we want to do. The Resiliency Task Force is trying to get some things done. There's just a committee that's looking at what happens and what they think is happening in Harris County. But everybody looks at it from their own viewpoint. My area floods, I want to protect it. Your area floods, but it's not as bad as mine. That's just the thing we run into. So we really need to try to focus on our problem. What do we do to solve it? As Joe has said, we don't know. It's not time yet to come up with the technical solutions. The flood control can do a lot of things to help us. And by the way, that's another issue that's really hurt us. Flood control has basically been completely revamped over the last couple of years. A lot of new people, and they've got another new starts and stops that I don't think have slowed our progress. It's not their fault, it's just what's happening. So I think the communities, I think the commissioner is correct. When you show up and you become a part of the issue, not a part of the problem, but a part of the answer, that's what we need. And we need for you to stay involved and stay involved. That's where I think we are.
Those are excellent points that you made. I'm under the tutelage of the esteemed Joe Patangelo. He's taught me a lot being on this board. One of the questions that I would need to have so that I can sell this properly, and whenever someone calls me and asks for money, especially organizations that say that they are nonprofits, I always ask them, what's your administrative cost? If you tell me that you can't tell me, I'm going to tell you no right now. I need to know so that I can tell them of the $300 million they're willing to charge us, or the $300. The administrative cost is only $3. That's a great investment. But if you can tell me it's going to cost $150 of $300, I've got a problem. Secondly, I already mentioned that this is the first step. I need to know the second step, because if it's going to cost me $300 today, then another $300, I'm at $600, and then another $300, because I just heard the numbers. They went from 600 to maybe $1 billion. Did you say $3 billion? I need to know, because they will ask. David Guerrero from Kleinwood Mud.
That's a good question, and the answer, there are several questions there. One, administrative costs. It would be run, in my view, it would be up to whoever's elected to the board, but it would be run, in my view, very similarly to Kleinwood Mud. You would have a lawyer, a bookkeeper, and all the other.
Started out wrong.
No, but I mean, you're asking. I have districts that, the legal bills are, they have a budget of $100,000 a year for everybody, and then I have districts who have several $1 million budgets a year. And I have some that have $40,000 legal budgets and some that have several $100,000 legal budgets. So it depends on what you have going on. So I think it's an unfair question to say, tell me what your administrative costs are, because they're going to be what they are, but it's going to be directly related to the amount of activity that you have going on. If you have no activity, you're not going to have any administrative costs. Your annual audit will be 10 or 20,000 a year, and then it will grow as your activity grows. So I don't think that you can say that it would be X dollars or X percent. It depends on what you have going on. Then I will tell you, one of my good friends lives on the first street behind Meyer Park in Kleinwood. And she said that with Harvey, She watched the water rise until it got to her house, and everyone down the hill from her flooded. And when I asked her about this, she said, absolutely, I would support it. And when we talk about what the future projects are, which is, I guess, the next question that Joe is referring to, what we have in front of us is the Cypress Creek implementation plan. And that's something that's been vetted by flood control, and we believe it will be able to be approved. We don't know, even if you paid it as pay-as-you-go, it's going to take a number of years to get it done. If you do it with bonds, it'll take a number of years to get it done. You can't move that much dirt in 2 years, is what I'm told by engineers. And I think the fair answer to your question is the community and the board will decide which projects get done. I agree with Joe that the first board should study whether or not all those detention ponds should get done, or if there are other items that are more effective at protecting residences and businesses than the ones in the implementation plan. And you're going to have to go back to flood control to get those answers as well. And I don't think we know all the answers to those questions.
Let me just say that there won't be any incremental taxes added. All the taxes will be approved not only by the special district board, but also by the citizens in the district. So there won't be any additional taxes other than those voted upon by the district. Good question. Let's do one more question. If you will look at your program, see at the bottom, the QR code, you will log on to the task force website, and you click on contact us, and you can leave a message, and we'll get to you within the next few weeks, next few days. Also, we will put the slideshow, with the dynamite slideshow, you're going to want to see it. We'll put that on the URL as well. One more question, yes.
What is not on this sheet, there's an email address, cypresscreekflooding@gmail.com. If you had a question that didn't get answered today, if you will send us to cypresscreekflooding.com, that address is on the website, then we will get back. We're all volunteers, and so it won't be maybe within the first hour after you send this, but contact us and we'll do our best to answer.
Hello, thank you for having this tonight. My name is Jerry Holman. I wear a lot of hats. I'm the general manager for Harris County Freshwater Supply District 61. I also have a water user coalition. I'm the co-chairman. We have over 50 districts. I'm also the AWBD Government Affairs Chairman. Today I'm here representing Jerry Holman, the Harris County taxpayer. And I wanted to make a couple of quick comments. I took some notes through some of the discussions that we had earlier. For the elected officials here, I do not want you to misunderstand the presence or concern of the presence here of the people here today as support for this creation of a new drainage district. I think people want to know what's going on. I wanted to make that point. Also, I want to make the point that water flows downhill, its easiest route. This creation, and I know it's meant well, we have to think through this. It has to be right the first time. My concern is that if we don't take care of everything, or at least have a plan in place, that the little things that we do, and I'm all about making some progress. I agree, we need to make progress here and there, but this plan has to be well thought out. We only have one shot at this, and I want to make sure that it's right. Overlapping taxing entities. That concerns me as well. You had mentioned over here something about overhead. Well, we already have an entity in place to take care of this. Granted, I understand they don't function very well, but nevertheless, they are in place, and flood control should be taking care of what they're not taking care of.
Yes.
So these are all issues and concerns. One thing that caught my attention is you had indicated that in the study that you were talking about a 100-year flood plain. That's where we all used to go, a 100-year floodplain. That's where you could get insurance. Now it's changed to a 500-year. But you said, you talked about 19% of the flooded areas or homes would be improved in this 100-year floodplain after we spent $600 million. Did I understand that correctly? And that's a low percentage.
Actually, it's 39% structures to be taken off the flood map of 10 years. 50-year, it'd be 22%, and 100-year flood, 19% structure to be removed from the flood maps.
And that's from the Cypress Creek implementation plan.
So we might take care of small events, but we've had, what, 3, 4, 500-year events in the past, what, 6 years? What help would we do?
Well, I think this is the first step.
Again, I think we just have to think about it. I applaud y'all. I empathize with people who flood. I know plenty of them. But we really need to, I don't want to get in a hurry. I know this has been going on for a long time. But we need to take a couple steps back and rethink this and get all the players involved and come up with a well thought out strategy. It's as if, well, let's create it and it'll happen.
That's the purpose for this meeting, is to bring out the people like yourself who are interested in the welfare of our community and involve you in the thought process and the planning. The purpose is not to have everything thought out, like a developer comes to create a district. He has everything thought out. He knows how much his potential is going to cost. He knows how much the land is going to cost. He knows how much the utilities are going to cost. And it's all pre-programmed. That's not the case here.
Well, let's see if the
I'm
people
not here to do a debate. I'm here to ask you to engage in the process, because we're not here to debate whether or not this happens. What we're here is to discuss whether or not we would like to participate together in securing our community and creating some entity that will get us that place at the table and start participating. It's a lot like when we started the North Harris County Regional Water Authority. We didn't know what the plan was. We only knew that it was a big jump to get there. And we all jumped in favor. You want to know why? The main reason was the state water plan came in, changed the rules so that the city could cram down our throats some disincentive fees so they could collect money from us and spend it on a system that would actually force us to buy retail Houston water. We ended up getting it at wholesale because we created the North Harris County Water Authority.
Well, I would pay more taxes. I would pay more taxes if it was an effective, efficient solution to the issue. I would suggest that you really go out and talk to people about how this is created, and then when we go for a vote, what does that mean exactly? So if the district is created, let me finish, please. If the district is created,
you're not asking questions.
I'm asking you a question that I think is relevant for to gain support. I want to help you. If the district is created, then you go for a vote. You go for a vote to sell bonds. What would you go to a vote for? To the public.
So I'm just going to wrap this up. We've been here for an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes now. We're going to wrap it up now. the whole purpose of this meeting was to engage you leaders. This has been going really fast. There is a really big problem out there. You got to begin somewhere. I do understand the need to know all the answers going into it. And you can study these problems for decades. In fact, flood control has. Flood control has studied problems for decades. And a lot of times things get mired in studies. I'm like the commissioner. I want to get something done. And I realize that that's a big number. But in the grand scheme of things, billions have been spent on probably less protection. I don't want to spend billions on less protection. I want to spend, what I really want to do is I want to start buying the basins. I want to start expanding the basins. That's going to be some component of any plan. Detention is going to be a component of any plan. Look at any PER, flood control is prepared. And I guarantee you it's a channelization, detention, and maybe even preservation included. And some leave it alone. So it is a component of a plan. And the reason why I threw out the big numbers is because it's going to be really big numbers if you want to get to full protection. And you may never get there. You may never get to full protection. So this is really just an opportunity for us. It's a unique opportunity for us. We live in Cypress Creek, approximately 300 square miles. That's probably rivals some counties in their entirety, 450,000 people. Again, probably rival a lot of counties in population. This is an opportunity for the Cypress Creek residents to control their own destiny when it came to flooding and not go fight for scraps in a bigger program. The flood control district has their hands full, 1,700 square miles, 2,400 miles of channel. I surely would like for flood control to go out and protect every single watershed in Harris County. That's just not reality. And so personally, and from my personal life and from my volunteer life, I want to protect Cypress Creek residents as best I can. And I think this is a viable opportunity for that. It's not perfect, we grant it. By the way, hey Joe, used to be part of the Pinewood Mud. So it's not perfect, but it's a start. And I'd like for y'all to give us some serious consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do need to go.
Again, if you have questions.
Before your turn.
Sure.
I have one question. If this entity becomes a law, are you going to be totally independent?
We'd like to hope so, yes.
You got a county engineer, you got to deal with